If Alec is the victim of a vigilante, nobody's gonna hold him accountable.
Was the lawsuit over the boat crash that killed Mallory Beach and in which Paul Murdaugh faced criminal charges part of the motive in the murder of Paul and his mother Maggie? Prosecutors say yes. We take a look at what we know about that case. I'm Angenette Levy, and welcome to Law and Crime's Sidebar podcast. At the time that Paul Murdaugh and his mother Maggie were murdered on June 7th, 2021, Mallory Beach's family was suing Alec Murdaugh and Buster Murdaugh, and Paul was facing criminal charges. The Murdaugh family's boat crashed on February 24th, 2019 in Beaufort County, killing Mallory Beach, who was a passenger. Earlier in the evening, surveillance video showed Paul Murdaugh pulling into Parker's convenience store in his white pickup truck, towing the boat. Paul can be seen walking into Parker's, and Sled said he used the ID of his older brother Buster to buy beer. Paul was only 19 years old at the time. He walked out of Parker's moments later, triumphantly holding the beer above his head as he walked back to his truck. Hours later, Paul and his friends stopped at Luther's, a bar, where they did some shots. The group of friends is in Luther's for about 23 minutes. Then they left, and they walked back to the boat. Paul appears to be talking, and Mallory Beach and her boyfriend, Anthony Cook, are seen talking and laughing, just like a boyfriend and a girlfriend would, walking back to the boat. It just looks like a bunch of kids out having fun. Then a short time later.
What bridge is it? Paul, what bridge is this? Paul, what bridge?
911, where's your emergency? Hello? Police, fire, EMS. Hello?
We're in a boat crash on Archer Street.
Whereabouts on Archer Street?
In Archer Street, the only bridge on Archer Street.
Dashcam video shows Anthony Cook absolutely distraught, calling his parents. He and Mallory were thrown from the boat, and he can't find her.
Y'all know Alec Murdaugh?
Oh yeah, I know his name.
That's his son.
That's so driving the boat.
Good luck.
Mallory's body was found about a week later. In the end, the Murdaugh name couldn't stop the wheels of justice from turning. Paul Murdaugh was indicted for several counts of boating under the influence, one resulting in the death of Mallory Beach. If convicted, he faced the possibility of 25 years in prison. The testimony in the murder trial has stated that Alec Murdaugh was at his office on June 7th, 2021, working on some things for the boat case. That was a Monday, and a status conference was scheduled 3 days later on June 10th. That same day, June 7th, the law firm's CFO said she confronted Alec Murdaugh about $792,000 in missing fees. That night, several hours later, Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were murdered.
I got a phone call sometime in the middle of the night, 11:30, that's my recollection.
That was on June 7th, 2021?
That's right.
Into June 8th, 2021?
I think I heard it's still June 7th when I hear about it, but yes.
On June 8th, 2021, did you have any conversations with any of the lawyers involved in the boat case or any communications?
I believe so. I think that it was more of there wasn't a whole lot of consideration to be given to the fact that the hearing wasn't going to go forward. It was sort of shock and horror of what had happened, and nobody really knew what to do in the moment.
Of course, that hearing's not going forward after this.
It did not.
The attorney for the Beach family, Mark Tinsley, testified that he had previously told Alec Murdaugh that he could settle this lawsuit for $10 million. That was money that Alec Murdaugh didn't have. But with Paul and Maggie's murders, that was unlikely to happen, even the $10 million payout.
Nice people get good verdicts. You really have to motivate a jury to want to help somebody in a civil case. And so if you compared, say, Attila the Hun with some sweet grandmother, who gets a better result? It's the sweet grandmother. If Alec is the victim of a vigilante, nobody's going to hold him accountable. Doesn't make any difference what he did or how clearly what he did contributed. The case would be over against Alec. And so initially, it could have been over. It appeared that it was going to be over against Alec because I had other defendants. I had Parker's convenience store that clearly violated its rules.
Maggie Murdaugh's sister, Marion Proctor, testified about the boat case and what Alec Murdaugh said to her about it after the murders.
He said that his number one goal was clearing Paul's name. And I thought that was so strange because my number one goal was to find out who killed my sister and Paul.
Alec Murdaugh's attorneys also questioned Marion Proctor about the boat case.
And you knew that Maggie felt very strongly that Paul was not driving the boat when the beautiful Mallory Beach came to her tragic death, right?
Correct.
I mean, Maggie was adamant. She was on a mission to clear Paul's name, was she not?
Sort of.
Sort of. And she was, and you're not critical of Alex for wanting to clear Paul's name after he was murdered, are you?
I'm not critical about that at all. I think that was his way of honoring Paul after he was gone. I just thought his priority should have been focusing on finding out who killed Maggie and Paul.
Recently, Mallory Beach's family settled the lawsuit against Buster Murdaugh and Maggie Murdaugh's estate, but the case is not over yet. Joining me to talk about the boat crash and the impact it may have had on the Murdaugh family is Eric Bland. He represents Gloria Satterfield's children and her estate. Gloria Satterfield, of course, was the former housekeeper and nanny for the Murdaugh family. She died after slipping and falling at the family's property back in 2018. And really, she was more than a housekeeper and a nanny. She was considered to be a member of the family. So Eric, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Angenette.
So the motive in this case, according to the prosecution, is all this financial pressure that Alec Murdaugh was under, whether he was scared that afraid his financial crimes were going to come to light. Also, though, there's been discussion about the boat case and how that really put a lot of stress on Alec Murdaugh and his family. So talk to me a little bit about, from your perspective, as somebody who's been kind of involved in this whole saga from another aspect of it, how much, havoc the boat crash in that case wreaked on the Murdaugh family?
An immense amount of pressure. I've been talking about Mark Tinsley because he's such a close friend of mine and a colleague way before the trial. And I said that he's a human terrorist. You let him in your house, he'll blow it up. And I think the world saw how tenacious Mark Tinsley is and was to Alex, just in the pre-jury testimony, not so much in the jury testimony, because Phil Barber exercised some seriously good judgment by only giving him one question on cross-examination. Alex knows Mark's skills. Mark is a highly accomplished lawyer, highly accomplished with 8-figure jury verdicts and multiple settlements. And he knew having him set his teeth in Alex's hide, so to speak, was a major problem. The boat case, not only financially on what it was going to do for him, think of the pressure that it put internally into the family. His son, Paul, who he loved, and I don't doubt that he loved his son, Paul, whether he killed him or not. I do believe that there was genuine love there. Was being charged with felony DUI homicide, which was going to be a 20 to 30 year sentence. There was going to be an example made of him because there was alcohol involved, and the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and similarly boating accident. There was so much public scrutiny. He was going to get a very long sentence, and that was weighing heavily on Alex because he knew that a kid like Paul, a smaller kid, I think he was 5'8", would have a pretty difficult time in an adult prison with some pretty big guys. Buster was also being sued. Alex was being sued. Maggie was threatening to be sued for failure to supervise. So you have all of the internal pressures of sitting at a dinner table, looking at your children and your wife and realizing, oh my gosh, they're embroiled in criminal and civil litigation.
Let's keep in mind, Eric, that Alec Murdaugh had a huge name down there in that area, and his family had a huge name, and they've been around for 100 years. So everybody knows who they are.
Yes, yes, and no. Yes, tremendous name recognition in the 14th Judicial Circuit, the 5-county area down there. Not so much statewide. The firm had a tremendous reputation statewide, and that was from Johnny Parker and Ronnie Crosby, because they did try cases outside of the 14th Judicial Circuit, whether it be a products liability case or a CSX railroad case that Johnny Parker specialized in, where there were railroad accidents or a derailment situation. And, you know, we had a train derailment in Graniteville, South Carolina, where a lot of chemicals got released, similar to what's happening in East Palestine, Ohio, where you live, in the Ohio area there. So yes, Johnny and Ronnie Crosby did, but not so much Alex. Alex stayed in that area, but staying in that area, you go up against the same attorneys. You're with the Mark Tinsley's Gooding and Gooding firm. You're with Corey Fleming. You're with Moss and Kuhn, Corey Fleming's old firm. So you are right in some aspect, but Alex really didn't have a statewide reputation.
His defense, Alec Murdaugh's defense, is likely going to argue that, yes, the boat case was horrible. They were being sued, but it sounds like they're going to say that maybe it wasn't that big of a deal for Alec, that he had other stuff that was more pressing or more concerning than the boat case. I mean, he's accused of stealing between $8 and $10 million. That's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to concede anything that he was under any kind of pressure at all. But if you look at the financial pressure, certainly the law firm was up close and personal to him, because Jeannie Seckinger confronted him on the morning of the murder, and he knew the situation with Chris Wilson, that he had taken $792,000. I think he was also very concerned about the Satterfield matter, hence why he started texting Tony 2 months before the boating accident and saying to him, hey, I'm working on your case. We should know something soon. Give me a call, I'll give you the status. And we all know that that case was resolved 2 years before. He stole the money, and the case had actually been dismissed in October of 2020. The reason he's going to say, the defense is going to say that the Tinsley case didn't matter, the boating case, it wasn't even on a trial roster. It wasn't going to trial. And that they're saying that it was a normal discovery motion that was supposed to be heard on June 10th. And the judge, you know, if he ordered the production of financial information, that would have taken place at a later time. And they're going to argue that to get the kind of financial information for punitive damages, you actually have to get an actual damages verdict first. And all they would have to produce under our case law is a net worth statement, which is, you know, 2 pages. Mark Tinsley said, no, we were well beyond that stage. And that John Tiller, Alex's attorney before he died, had agreed that he was going to produce much more than just a net worth statement.
You're friends with Mark Tinsley. He is still under subpoena for the murder trial. He could possibly be called in the state's rebuttal case. The Mallory Beach portion of this case just recently settled.
Yeah, it did. And funny that Johnny Parker objected to that settlement, because he tried to say that he had preference due to the $500,000 loan that he made to Alex Murdaugh. It was a fair settlement. Looking at the situation, it gives a clear shot that Mark wants at Parker Convenience Store. Parker is fighting tooth and nail against this. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he's got 8 sets of lawyers. He's gone to the legislature to try to get the legislature to amend the joint contribution statute. So right now, if you sue 8 people, you could collect from one person. And then that person, if he was only 20% liable, would have to go try to collect from everybody else. Mr. Parker Convenience Store wants the legislature to change the law that if I'm only 10% responsible for this incident that the jury determines, then I should only pay 10%. I shouldn't pay any more. So Parker has taken this on as a crusade. And you say, why? Well, he's self-insured. So any verdict that Mark Tinsley gets is going to actually come out of the pocket of Mr. Parker and not, Zurich Insurance Company or Travelers. So it's hot and heavy. I think the Beach family was very magnanimous in letting Buster get $500,000 from that settlement. The remainder goes to some creditors. The receivers get paid. The victims will have a little pot from what was set aside. Victims of the theft will have a little pot of money. But don't let the defense cry Alex poor. And the reason is because his father died and left a $16 million trust for the 4 children. Each of the 4 children, Alex, John Marvin, Randolph, and Lynn, inherited $4 million that's untouchable under South Carolina law. So Alex is sitting on $4 million after his dad died in June of 2021. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I knew there was something. I didn't know that it was $4 million.
Yeah, he liquidated the IRA to settle. And there's a 50% penalty, that he had to pay. He had $1.8 million in his IRA, and he liquidated that out. And Dick Harpootlian got $600,000 of that for his legal fees and Jim's legal fees for all the cases, Angenette. Can you imagine? Now we know what he's spending on expert witnesses. It's a huge amount of money. I'm just telling you, each expert charges about $500 to $7,500 a day just to sit around. Some do 10. Then you deal with the fact that he's renting out a $20,000 a week compound.
Right.
For his trial.
The wedding venue.
Wedding venue. You start adding those numbers up and you feel like the fornicating you're getting isn't worth the fornicating you're getting for your legal fee. You say, you know what? I think Dick did a deal with the devil. Yes, it's the trial of the century. No question in South Carolina. And the notoriety is great. And Dick always believed that even bad press is good press. But I'm not sure Jim Griffin, I think you're seeing a metamorphosis in Jim as this trial's going on. He's getting a little shorter in his temper. He's getting a little bit more frustrated in his cross-examinations because he's a young guy. He's 57, 58 years old. He's got a long career ahead of him. Dick Harpootlian, he could tap out. He's got more money than God. His wife's an ambassador in Sylvania. He's the 3rd phone call from Joe Biden. If he wants to go up and be an attorney general or something, Joe Biden will give him any position in the administration, any ambassadorship. So his career is essentially done. I think you're seeing a lot of those people at the defense table. Maggie Fox is a very good friend of mine and a very accomplished lawyer. And she should be doing some of the lifting in that case. She is very good and she's just sitting there. And I think it's noticeable that she's sitting there and it's not right because she is not just window candy. She is a good looking woman just like you are. And she's accomplished just like you are. And she can do the job. And I think they're making a fundamental mistake in not having more diversity in their defense team.
You could be very right about that and it doesn't look good when the jury is sitting there and there are 2 women there just sitting there handing cell phones back and forth.
Yeah,
but still.
Yeah, 2 are paralegals, the Holly that sits behind Dick and Jim Griffin. But Maggie Fox is a real lawyer and she can really lawyer and she should be. One of the criticisms I have of the state case is the lack of diversity in the state prosecution team. Savannah is the only female lawyer. There's no lawyers of color. It should look like the jury. And I'm seeing a lot of white old men.
Well, Eric Bland, as always, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate you coming on.
I'm happy to always appear with you.
You too. And that's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. You can listen to and download Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Angenette Levy, and we will see you next time.